So hello, welcome to Super Regera, or as you may know it, Koenigsegg UK, and today, as the title may suggest, is the beginning of a very special journey. So this series is going to be appropriately titled The Chronicles of Koenigsegg, and we're going to be driving the most significant cars from this incredible brand, finishing with something very special, which I shall share with you later on in the journey. So as part of this series, we'll be filming CCR, CCX, AGIRA R, the 1.1, an AGIRA RS and a Regera, plus one more very special car. As far as I'm aware, this documentation of what's about to unfold hasn't been done yet. And so I feel very privileged to be invited by both Koenigsegg UK and officially by the Koenigsegg factory to share the journey of this remarkable brand with you. Now, this is a sort of two-part approach, really. I am really interested in sort of digging down deep into this brand and to get to know the history and the intricacies of it so I can share it with you. But ultimately, we have a very long journey ahead of us because there will ultimately be a new Koenigsegg Gearbox joining the channel at some stage. But before then, we're going to have a chat with Christian von Koenigsegg himself, and we're going to go through the significant milestones of the cars which Christian and the brand has launched over the years, and ultimately drive each one of them individually on this channel to share with you. Two of them are in this room right now. So let's hop over to Sweden with Christian, have a chat, and then come back to Super Regera to check out these cars. So hello, Christian. How are you?
Hi, James. I'm doing great. How are you?
Really good. I was just thinking we've done a really good job here of our Koenigsegg themed backdrop, and then here you are, sat in front of a Gearbox, no less. So well done.
Well, very impressed by your backdrop, and of course, I thought I need to tease you a little bit with your upcoming car.
Thanks very much. I mean, it pains me to know how long I have to wait anyway. So thanks for rubbing that in my face.
It's kind of a good kind of way of car ownership. You don't have to pay full, and you can enjoy it. There's not so many servicing costs and this and that. And
I like the sound of this. Yeah, top work. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for giving us your blessing on this project. We're incredibly excited for it. For anyone tuning in right now, this is the preface and introduction to a series that we are calling the Chronicles of Koenigsegg, which is effectively going through the major milestone cars of the Koenigsegg brand to share the entire journey of what makes this brand so impressive and so special. And ultimately, as Christian just mentioned, we are on the road to Gearbox, where in the not too distant future, Gearbox will be joining the channel. And I still can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. So we thought it would be worthwhile educating both myself and yourselves on the significance of this special brand, and what better person to talk to than Christian von Koenigsegg himself. So thank you very much, Christian. Really appreciate it.
well, it's definitely my pleasure. It's going to be quite emotional for me as well to kind of recoup everything we have done over the last 20 years or so, and all the different models. Even for me, you know, when time passes, things start to blur together a little bit. So it's also a good exercise for me to really, think everything through. What have we done, and what is the difference between all the car models, and why, and so on. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're starting as early as we can based on the cars that we're able to get our hands on. Amazingly, we're up to 7 or 8 confirmed cars. And the earliest one that we could find, I'm actually sat in front of right now. Now, I appreciate this isn't the very start, is it? Just give us a quick overview of your very first car.
Right. So then we have to go back all the way to 1994.
Wow. Okay.
That's when I started the company. And, I had this idea of creating a mid-engine compact, at the time, I guess, supercar, with short overhangs, a bit inspired by the, at the time, brand new McLaren F1, I guess, of lightness and efficiency and purity, kind of no unnecessary frills, just pure performance in the lightest, most exciting package possible. So I started drawing a car on my computer. It was back in the days. It was a Windows 3.11 386 processor computer, and I remember using Paint just to do some kind of line drawings. And it turned out to be like a wraparound windscreen on the first sketch, and a removable hardtop, and big side air intakes, and short overhangs. So really much the essence of what most Koenigsegg's since have looked like. And I showed this sketch to a designer friend of mine, an industrial designer, David Crawford. And we started brainstorming and looking at cars like F40s, McLarens, Ford GT40s, and this and that, and putting kind of post-it marks on what we liked and what we didn't like about these cars. And then he started hand modeling a scale 1 to 5 clay model, which we still have. And I gave my input on that, and he took kind of ideas from my first sketch, and it really turned out to be the basis for all our Koenigseggs. And 2 years later, in 1996, we had the first running prototype. It was a quite rough machine. It had a kind of a hybrid steel carbon monocoque. So that was very early days for carbon fiber chassis, and we were by no means experts in carbon fiber at the time. But we started kind of playing around with it. So the bottom floor was a carbon fiber honeycomb sandwich, but kind of these boxy sections that you see on carbon fiber monocoques that we also have today, they were out of steel, kind of like aeroplane with walls in between to make them stiff and so on. The wheelbase was actually 2,660 millimeters, which is what stayed with us until the Jesko. The car was 2 meters wide, because that was the, if we ever wanted to go racing, the Le Mans ACO regulation said you're not allowed to be 2 meters wider than 2 meters, so we stayed within that envelope. Let's say the cockpit area, where you sit, it's exactly 70% of the width of the car, which is again the GT1 Le Mans regulation, and it's also a feature that has stayed with us ever since. And it's of course to reduce drag as much as possible, but we're not allowed at the time to make it any smaller. And we drove this car for the first time in the summer of 1996. Very rough interior. The bodywork was actually carbon fiber already then, but all hand modeled by myself and 3-4 other guys who kind of knew what we were doing or not. but that car still runs, and it's still a lot of fun, and a lot of the suspension geometries and things like that has really laid the foundation for whatever we did afterwards. And that was the absolute first Koenigsegg. And I don't have any pictures with me here today, but maybe you can cut that in later or something to show your audience what this thing looked like. And you can really recognize it's a Koenigsegg, but a very rough, dirty one, kind of. So that was the absolute first one.
Yeah. Out of all of that fantastic backstory, I'm still amazed that you sketched your original outline in Microsoft Paint.
and I still actually use Paint a lot, because it's on every PC, and when I get emails backwards and forwards from my design team and our engineering team, they do screen dumps and things like that. So I bring it up in Paint, and then I draw some lines and some arrows and things. I want this over here, you should move that around, maybe tuck this down a little bit, and then send it back.
Brilliant.
I really use Paint as my feedback tool to my whole organization on technical and visual things, because it's so quick and dirty that and it exists everywhere. So that is kind of my tool for creation in a way still.
Well, if there was ever an endorsement for the power of Paint, that would be it. Fabulous. So our journey starts. The first car that we'll be driving as part of this series will in fact be a CCR. It won't be this exact one. We've sourced one from a very kind owner. This journey then picks up around about 2004, right?
Correct. Yes, this is from 2004, and it was the continuation of the CC8S, which was our first production model. We showcased the CC8S at the Paris Motor Show year 2000. Took our first orders, and then it took another 2 years to have the homologation, the crash testing, the emission testing, setting up the first production line, and deliver cars. So the first CC8S came out into the public and to an owner in 2002. The CCXR had 655 horsepower, which at the time was a Guinness World Record for the most powerful homologated production car in the world. It was our first, let's say, world record, our first Guinness record, and a first of quite a few that came afterwards. And I remember at the time the car magazines, like Car at the time or whatever it was called, they kind of wrote, there's this car from Sweden and it has this crazy amount of 655 horsepower. Whoever needs that? That is way too much. That kind of reaction. And nowadays, of course, we know that a Tesla Model S or some kind of Mercedes AMG E-Class or something that's like everyday stuff. But back then in 2002, it was unheard of and was even a world record. So the CCR was the continuation of the CC8S. The differences is kind of easy to point out. We tweaked the brakes, a little bit bigger brakes. We also stiffened the chassis a little bit, stiffer anti-roll bar. We added a bigger front lip to the car to add a little bit more downforce. Also bigger rear wing. Actually, the CC8S didn't really have a rear wing at all, but with the CCR, we started offering a rear wing. And then we upgraded the engine from one supercharger to two superchargers and did some other tweaks. So we got 806 horsepower, which took the Guinness record from the CC8S. And that was our second Guinness record for the world's most powerful homologated production car. And that was 2 years later in 2004. So that's the car you're going to drive. And let's see what you think of it.
So what I'm picking up on now, I mean, obviously, up until this point, I've been doing a lot of research on your cars. Amazing to see that you were setting this theme for breaking records pretty much since day one.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, when we did our first wind tunnel testing in the end of the 90s, we saw that we had super good and efficient aerodynamics on the shape we just had conceived from, let's say, passion and styling and ideas. We didn't have any sophisticated CFD tooling, but we got access to the Volvo wind tunnel, which had been upgraded for Formula One use during Ford's ownership, because Jaguar did Formula One and Volvo had the biggest tunnel that Ford owned, so they upgraded that to like over 250 kilometers per hour with rolling roads and things like that. So it was a very good wind tunnel, and we noticed that let's say if we didn't have all the wings and stuff on, we had a drag of under 0.30 with very good cooling and efficiency and stability. So we said, wow, with this power we have, this is going to go really, really fast. And already then we started realizing this is probably a world record breaking machine also for top speed and other things. And what I forgot to mention about the CCR is that, of course, we also got a Guinness world record for the fastest production car in the world, beating at the time the unbeatable and to a large degree the inspirational from my side McLaren F1.
So that for you must have been a massive moment.
Yeah, we took the CCR down to Nardo, which is a circular track in southern Italy, so we weren't even allowed to drive straight, which scrubs off a little bit of speed. And we managed to take another kilometer an hour faster top speed than the McLaren F1. So that was truly amazing. And this was like a few days before the Geneva Motor Show. So we brought the car into the show. It came in on the first press day, all dirty from the Nardo test track with a smoking fresh Guinness World Record.
Wow. So at that time, it was the Nardo speed record?
Maybe, perhaps. Maybe I don't know if they had any prototypes or anything running faster, but for sure, for a production car, it was a record at Nardo, because it was also a record at any track for a production car.
Phenomenal. Okay, so from the beginning, we're punching hard. That's good.
Right.
Top work.
Yeah, and I think, when I started out, I asked myself, well, first of all, I could see a lot of startups in this industry failed and kept on failing. I mean, very few made it, and most of those brands were very, very old. So how am I going to make it? And I realized, I mean, in order for anyone to want to buy my cars, they have to, I guess, be interesting, look interesting, preferably look good, be efficient, and do things other cars cannot do. Because otherwise it's easier to just buy some established brand sports car and get on with life. So I understood they had to stick out somehow. And of course, I try to push in every direction, and some directions are more noticeable or visible than others, but it's really pushing boundaries in a three-dimensional way, kind of in every direction, to make sure the car really stands out from the crowd.
So CCR production 2004 to 2006?
Yes, correct.
Cool. Okay.
That is correct.
And then from then on, you were on to CCX 2006 to 10.
Yes. So if we talk about numbers here also, and maybe you can correct me if you have read up on this, but I mean the CC8S, the first version, is just a handful. It's like 7 cars or something like that.
Yes, super small run.
It's on our webpage, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's around 7 or something like that. I think the CCR was definitely under 20. Like 18 or something like that, and so very, very, very limited numbers in the early days. I mean, we're a very, very small factory, and could not churn out. At the time, we were maybe 25 people working in the company, so extremely small. But then we felt that we wanted. I mean, the US has a big appetite for sports cars. The CC8S and the CCR, they were not certified for the US, which is a big jump for a small car manufacturer. So we brought in some partners and managed to revamp the CCR into, let's say, the CCX. And when revamp is probably the wrong word, because here we really went digital. The CC8S and the CCR are very much hand-modeled cars by myself and very few people. The drawings are, well, the CCR is getting into 3D CAD and so on. The CC8S was more or less blank on paper. But the CCX, we laser scan the CCR. And amazingly, when we put that data into 3D CAD, we can see that our handmade model is actually super accurate from left to right hand side and this and that, which is very difficult when you hand model something. It was like within 1.5 millimeters or something from left to right hand side, which is much, much better than other cars I've heard of that are hand modeled. But the CCX is the first kind of digital Koenigsegg. So we took the quite tiny CCR, we stretched the chassis, we raised the roof, we increased the overhangs a little bit for homologation reasons and other reasons. We also made it a little bit easier to build, to pre-assemble areas of the cars before you put them together. So it is kind of the point where Koenigsegg goes into the modern age, and where we are becoming more of a real company and a small tiny car producer rather than a bunch of guys building cars, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a very big step for us, and we managed to reach US homologation I think it's in 97 or something. No, sorry, 2007, and deliver cars there. And the US becomes quite quickly our biggest market. And I would say the CCX was not really in itself a record-breaking car, because it still had the 806 horsepower from the CCR. Albeit the engine was very much upgraded for US emission regulations, and that was the car where we for the first time also casted our own engine blocks and things like that. So it's a very big difference technically, but not power-wise and not performance-wise. It was more emissions, homologation, everything in 3D digital CAD order, and just ready for the future kind of thing. So very exciting, monumental car, which shifted our marketplace to the whole world. Yeah, so very exciting.
There are actually a couple of records associated with that
There
car. Are. One of them at the time being the Top Gear lap record in 2005.
That is true, yes.
At that time, anyway. So, you know, that's still something.
It is true. I mean, but by no means it was a slouch.
No, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
It was a little bit heavier than a CCR. But of course also refined, and power and weight ratio is not everything. It's also refinement and fine tuning and all of these aspects. So no, extremely fast car. Still today a very competitive car on a track, I would say. I mean, that record stood for many years, and I think like 10 years after, like in 2017 or 16, it was still top 10 on Top Gear. So it was really ahead of its time, I would say. And it also proved that, yes, people think about top speed and acceleration and braking when it comes to Koenigsegg cars. Maybe not as much about lap times, but it's kind of the hidden secret in a way that we probably should have focused more time showing how good it is on a track and how fast lap times all our cars can produce. But at the same time, we had limited resources, and these big smashing numbers of top speed records and so on were more difficult for others to do, and in a way easier for us to do because we basically had to check everything and push the throttle and go. So
Yeah.
in a way, I guess that's why we focused more on showcasing that than lap times. But I'm really keen to show more lap times going forward, also with the old cars, to show really what they can do.
In my eyes, this is where things really take a huge step change. 2010, the AGIRA launches. Incredibly impressed with how much engineering and construction you guys are doing in-house.
Yes, I mean, we are, for many reasons, we do a lot of engineering in-house. I mean, it started out with that we could not basically afford the large engineering houses to help us, like maybe Bosch or other like traditional suppliers for electronics, or maybe if it's engines, if it's Cosworth or whatever it is. We were too small and did not have the budget, so we started see what can we do ourselves, and it turned out that we could do a lot ourselves, and not only could we do it in-house, we could also do it better. Engine management, electronic hardware, software, you kind of start believing in the team and yourself's ability more and more, and to do more and more things. So that has created a situation where we make our own hollow carbon fiber wheels, we make our own brake calipers, we're even a certified car lamp developer and manufacturer, so we don't do those in-house. We make our own seats in-house, wing mirrors, all the electronic controllers, software, cloud connectivity, phone apps, infotainment systems. There's really very little we don't do. I can mention a few things we don't do. For example, the airbag triggers we don't do ourselves. The ABS unit we don't do ourselves. Now we're even getting into designing our own steering racks and things like that. Just because we can, and we can improve on what is out there and really tweak it to perfection for our own needs. Yeah, so I guess after the CCX, before the AGIRA, we had the CCXR in 2007, 2008. And that is really, just to talk a few minutes about that, that was really just an extension of the CCX, making it environmentally conscious and more powerful. So it was really pioneering in the sports car industry to think about the environment back then. And I remember some of the larger Italian sports car manufacturer, they came to us and said, they were laughing, we called the car flower power because we could run on ethanol. And they said, who cares about this? This is just nonsense. And I said, well, two things, you get more power when you fill up on biofuel, and you're environmentally conscious, so why not? Yeah, but you're only making a handful of cars, it doesn't really matter. And from that perspective, of course, it doesn't matter, but it matters from the perspective of showcasing what's possible to the industry. And also, let's say for the customers, it's a talking point. Yeah, I have this super fast car, but at least it helped pave the way for environmentally conscious engines, and I don't pollute the world very much the few days I drive it. So it's kind of deeper than meets the eye, the meaning of that. And now, of course, no one is laughing at those ideas anymore, and even electrification has pretty much totally taken over. So, but yeah, so in many ways that is a very significant car for me, because it set the tone for everything going forward. That we're also a company considering the environment and pushing a lot of our energy and development money towards environmentally friendly technologies that enhance performance and gives us less impact to the environment. But still, the CCX and the CCXR, oh, by the way, that was again the world's most powerful production car, the CCXR. 1,018 horsepower, a few more than at the time the Bugatti Veyron. So another record again. but still it was fundamentally a CCX that had been around from 2006.
Next car that we'll be driving in this series is the AGIRA. Tell us about where you were as a company at that time, and bearing in mind you've already just set the benchmark so high. Where did you go from there?
Come 2009, we felt, it's time to do something more than just revamping. So we said it's time to act and take a big leap of faith and spend all our resources on the next model. So that's where the name came from. AGIRA is the Swedish, the verb for to take action. So we really changed the car fundamentally. I mean, the bodywork is completely new, suspension, triplex suspension, much bigger ceramic brakes with our own brake calipers. We introduced the hollow carbon fiber wheels for the first time in 2011 on the AGIRA R, and the AGIRA R is the biofuel version of the AGIRA. Again, pumping up the power to 1160 horsepower. So, I mean, it was a very, very fundamental car for us, especially since it's laid the foundation for the 1-to-1 and the AGIRA RS, which did both some interesting things for us.
Yeah, very much so. All of your cars seem to be setting these records as we go. The next car that we've managed to get our hands on for this series to drive is the AGIRA R. Now, talk about records associated with a car. This thing is bonkers, so I'll just read off a few. We've got 0 to 200 miles an hour in 24.96 seconds. 200 to 0 in 7.8. That was a world record. And then we've got a Guinness World Record for 0 to 300 to 0. This bends my mind. In 21.19 seconds. This is all in the same car.
Yes. I mean, the performance is truly astonishing. And what is a bit deceiving with our cars is that as they have such high top speed, and they have 6 or 7 gears, okay, with the Jesko we now have 9 gears, but all Koenigsegg's until now 6 or 7 gears apart from the Regera, and with that high top speed, it means that every gear covers a lot of speed change. So when you sit in the car, or if you hear a Koenigsegg, it sounds like a fast sports car accelerating. But until you sit in it, you don't realize the G-forces involved. Because where normally you go from maybe, let's say, 50, 60 kilometers per hour to 100 in second gear, we go almost from 100 to 200 in second gear. Twice the speed increase, but the same oral sensation of RPM movement. So they are very, let's say, they trick your mind to almost make them sound slower than they are, but they still sound fast. But in reality, they are crazy fast.
I've actually had that exact experience when we drove Regera. The revs audibly didn't match the numbers on the dash. I was like, this is bending physics. Well, how is it making this sort of tone, but the projectile is like a missile? It's crazy experience.
It's kind of hiding, in a way it's hiding the performance. Let's say that the sound, if we had a short gearbox in our cars, then they would sound as fast as they are. But then we would have to have, like in the Jesko, nine gears to reach the top speed. So actually the Jesko will in a way sound faster than anything else, because it has a short first, second, third, fourth gear and so on. And it has 1600 horsepower.
Okay, now in terms of platforms and chassis in cars that led to something special, this is the one that I might arguably be the most excited and intimidated to drive and share, is of course the 1-1. I mean, again, just figures and records are just bonkers. How did the idea come about to conceive a car which had the same sort of power as it did weight, hence 1-1 power to weight ratio?
Well, again, you know, when we develop our cars, we look at power to weight ratio. And we started seeing that we were getting closer and closer to a number of 1. And that is kind of a magical, never before achieved number with super hypercars or so on. Maybe you can, if you super tune some kind of Lotus 7 or something, you can reach it because the car is so light. and really just bare bones. But if it's like a proper car with proper aero, big tires and brakes and these things, and coolers for the power, all of these things add weight because you need them for the power, performance, and grip and braking. But they're also, well, giving you the downside of weight. So you kind of always have to fight that. And we saw we were kind of going in the right direction, but mostly because we were increasing power. So the one-to-one is really much more of a weight-saving exercise than a power increase exercise. But we had to do a little bit of both to get to the number 1. But that was super exciting. I mean, we really weighed every nut and bolt on a scale, and we had an Excel sheet and said, how are we going to shave away 50 kilos here out of the chassis and this and that. And at first it seemed impossible, but then you just cut off a few millimeters of each screw maybe sticking out and changing that to a titanium bolt, changing that aluminium bracket for a carbon bracket, and thinning out the bodywork and not painting this, and suddenly boom, you have 50 kilos, and the engine was tweaked a little bit, and then on top of it, a massive amount of downforce and the new Michelin Cup tires. And the package is just incredible. That is still today a car that almost no other modern or newer extreme hypercar can beat, even though it is now 5 years old or whatever it is.
Phenomenal. Well, audience will be happy to know that we've booked ourselves a closed stretch of road, actually, not to set any records, but just so I can press the accelerator for more than half a second. So just to try and convey what that power and that weight actually feels like, because that one-to-one power to weight ratio in the automotive space is unicorn land, right? It's the sort of dream scenario.
And if you put that car on a scale, which I encourage you to do, you will see not only are we telling the truth about the weight, which is actually, how should I put it, more unusual than one might think in this industry. It's actually turned out to be a little bit lighter.
Wow. Okay.
Than we believed. So it's actually a little bit better than a 1-to-1 ratio. And if you put it on a dyno, you will see the power is there as well. It's truly a 1-to-1 car. But of course, with this kind of power, you need control systems as well. And for the 1-to-1, we really went above and beyond to control this new found performance. So in track mode, the car hunkers down, both front and rear. The suspension stiffens up. There's a lot of active aero going on. We have flaps underneath the front splitter. We have this active top-mounted rear wing. The car changes rake with speed. But maybe the most important feature is the new traction control system we developed from the 1-to-1 and onwards, which is the fastest reacting traction control I've experienced in any car. It is we actually operate within the realms of on each combustion. So from one combustion to another, we can take out power directly in the combustion process depending on the slip level of the tire. So to put this into perspective, if you're on a dry road and you hit a wet patch or an oil slick or something during full acceleration, and I can probably only orally describe this for you to understand how fast it is, it sounds more or less like this. It just cuts over that spot of slickness, not 1 meter longer, not 10 centimeters longer. It's full power directly when you come off the slick spot. So it's an unbelievable sensation, especially in rain if you floor it. It just digs in and grips on every little dry spot it can with no hesitance, no delay, but more importantly, it doesn't keep the power on into the slickness. It just cuts it directly on the edge when it hits a slick spot. So it is super stable and safe from that perspective, with all that power.
That sounds bonkers. Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love to experience that, I'm still hoping it doesn't rain when I drive that car. Yeah, fabulous. Okay, looking back at even the cars we've spoken about now, in such a relatively short period of time, it's amazing how each model ups the game so much. I still don't know how you manage to break a record every time you launch a car. you would think at some point physics would take over and go, Christian, mate, just calm it down, yeah?
Well, yeah, I guess so, but we're not close to the limits of physics yet. And I have a very kind of, it's a bit silly, but unless you can, this is only one perspective of performance and record breaking, of course, but if you cannot slip your tires due to power up to your top speed, you don't have enough power.
I agree with that. Yeah.
You're underpowered. and I mean, if you take a Regera in the dry without traction control, it probably grips fully at like 180, 200 kilometers per hour. And so over 200, in a sense, it's underpowered.
I love your mindset, man. It's crazy. We
You see what I mean?
Break traction.
So there's still food left on the table. There's still food left on the table, kind of thing. And the other thing is that tire development is relentless. As much as our cars become better, the tires become better. And for each tire, you need to tune the car to that tire to take the most advantage out of it. And I mean, these new Cup 2Rs from Michelin, they're basically the same, I mean, not fully, but almost the same grip as a slick tire in the dry. It's not far off. And that was unheard of 5 years ago. So we have to also give credit to the tires, but you have to tune the car to the tire. So it's kind of tire development goes forward, car development goes forward. We improve, they improve, and then why wouldn't it be a new record, right? Unless we hit the physical limit of something, which I kind of just tried to explain, we're not even close of doing yet.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so moving on from the 1.1, next car in the series is the RS. This is for 2015 to 2017 car. I mean, again, the figures that, as we work our way up, the figures just get ridiculous. So this, I'm not sure if anyone's seen the video of this. This is the world's fastest production car, as tested in both directions. And you guys averaged a 277.9 miles an hour. I mean, watching the video, it doesn't, as crazy as this might seem, it doesn't look like you're trying that hard. It looks like it was a fairly gradual build, taking your time. I mean, you guys closed the road in Nevada.
Correct. Yes, correct.
Tell us a little bit about that day and anything that any feedback that you got from the driver as to what that experience was like.
Yeah. So a customer and a friend of mine, he bought an AGIRA RS, and he lives in the US, and he said, it would be fun to see how fast it can go. Yeah, it would be. And I told him we've been trying to shut down roads for years and to find the right venue to really prove how fast our cars are. And that's proven to be very, very difficult. And he said, well, let me give a shot. So he and his friends started calling around and talking to the authorities and so on, called me back like a month or two later. We've arranged it. Oh, really? Yeah. So just bring the car over and we will do it. Great, amazing. And at the same time, I started thinking about all the safety aspects and this and that. So I said, it's probably better we take our driver and we come and help you than you just do it yourself, because it's so many elements you need to control. And of course, we have never driven that fast. So we also want to check that kind of step by step it feels stable and that everything is under control, take measured data and see if there's anything that needs to be tweaked, because until that point, it was just a theoretical speed that we had never done before. So they managed to close off this highway in Nevada for 2 days. And we do some pre-setup. We do some work here in Sweden. We put a wheel on a test rig and spin it up for a minute over 500 kilometers per hour. Michelin take the tires to their aerospace division and push it as hard as they can in their most extreme tire testing machine. And then we go to Papenburg test track in Germany to drive as fast as we can there to just ease into this thing. And I think before and we also went to Denmark to drive as fast as we could on the longest straight we could find here, which ended up in a new 0 to 400 to 0 record, where we beat the Bugatti Chiron. They had that record for like a few weeks, and we didn't even plan to beat it, but we had to brake because the runway was so short. So it became a new 0 to 400 to 0 record. But then we end up in Nevada, and Niklas Lilja, our test driver, he has put a roll cage in the car, which, we felt that's okay. It only makes the car heavier, it doesn't make it faster. But if anything goes wrong, at least there's this little extra level of protection of some sort. And then he put some sensors on the suspension to see suspension travel and if the car is lifting or not, and some data loggers, and that's about it. And I tell him to kind of ease into it and measure and measure and measure. So we end up the first day, he goes one pass and comes back like way over 400. So, hey Nicholas, we should ease into it. Yeah, but it felt so good, so I just kept on flooring it. And then he does like 2 or 3 more passes, and then we have our first one directional record, and then we do it in the other direction. And so it went much faster. I mean, in 2 hours or something, we're done, and we have 2 days. So I think it's kind of what you said. It was, everything felt good, everything worked perfect, nothing. So he basically just kept on pushing, and it went really, really quickly. Michelin was there because, of course, they were very keen to see that their tires were behaving and so on. And at first they had said, for every run, you need to change the tires, just in case. So after the first really fast run, we opened the rear bonnet in the front and looked at the tires, and we could still see the flash casting marks across the thread. Across the thread. We hadn't even worn off.
Just the box fresh.
And they had never seen anything like it. They said, this car just loves these tires, or the other way around. There's just something never seen before in how benign the car is to these tires at this speed. So we kept the same tires for the duration of the event, and those tires stayed on the car for 2 years or something afterwards.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
So yeah, I think the effortlessness that you see on the video is kind of true. At the same time, it was a very nerve-wracking thing, because you have birds, you have animals, you have tumbleweeds. It could be a nail. I mean, we cleaned the road and everything, but there's so many factors that play in that is outside of our control. And if something goes wrong, it's fundamental. So very nerve-wracking, but an amazing result, and of course an amazing feeling when we were done. And I think our theoretical top speed of the RS was 275 miles per hour, and we did 277.9 in average in 2 directions. So it showed also that our theories were very much correct, and our simulation tools really have played a significant role in making the car capable to do what it did.
And it's important to say that it was achieved in both directions, because I mean that's what classifies a proper record. You know, you might have a tailwind one direction and a headwind in the other. All sorts of variables.
In this case, I mean, it was a very, very straight road, but it had a slight incline, and it was pretty windy this day. The wind almost stopped us. It was mostly side wind, and it was fairly even, so we decided to go. And the car did not care at all for this wind at that speed. It was straight as an arrow. But it's a little bit like, in one direction it's slightly downwards, and in the other direction slightly upwards. So therefore, it was very important to do 2 directions as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, and then speaking of step change once more, we're now on to Regera. And I mean, this again for me was as much of a change as it was from CCX platform to AGIRA, from AGIRA to Regera. You've gone into hybrid, and just a complete, almost a ethos change in car, as the level of luxury also stepped up, right?
Yeah, the Regera is very much a deviation from the fairly straight path of performance machines we were on. I just felt the urge, I guess, to create something very different and more of a GT-esque experience, but still maintaining incredible levels of performance, and I would also say an incredible level of trackability, even though in essence it's a GT car. So when you get into this car, let's say the sounds and noises from the engines is much less than any previous Koenigsegg, because it's the first Koenigsegg where we decouple the engine and transmission from the monocoque. It's not locked in solid as part of the chassis. It's cushioned on active mounts, and that just takes away all the mechanical racketing inside the car, which I must say many of our customers have learned to love, because you're basically inside the engine and you hear everything like in no other car, but it's very visceral and very, very engaging, of course. But here, this is a GT car, so you don't want to hear every poppet valve, every injector, every cam chain or whatever. So you hear more the rumble, the roar, the intake, the exhaust, than all this mechanical clattering, which in itself is pretty cool. But so that is a big change. To go with this GT feeling, I said, how can we make the smoothest, torquiest, most powerful, but still engaging powertrain, which is still exciting. And I had for a couple of years been driving around in Tesla Model S's, the high performance versions, and I got kind of astounded by how fun it is to have instant power under your right foot, and a slight movement is immediately synaptically transferred to the ground. It's a little bit like the traction control I just described, that it's just you're really connected to the elements instantly with no lag. And I noticed that in the Tesla, I did not miss shifting because of the instantaneous reaction of the car from my foot. For example, if you're overtaking a car on a two-lane road, when you have a gearbox, you're kind of waiting for your moment, you shift down, you throttle, you fill the intake with air, and maybe there's a turbo spool up and this and that, and off you go, and it kind of goes faster and faster and faster. But with a Tesla, or that exaggerated into the Regera, when you think of overtaking, you're already past. Everything that was supposed to happen to prepare you is happening instantly together with your thought to do that. But what I was missing in the Tesla, of course, it wasn't powerful enough. It was not a proper sports car, and it didn't have an engine sound. So I said, how do I take this sensation and revamp it into a Koenigsegg? And I started thinking it's important for me that the engine is connected to the wheels, that it's not some kind of electric power plant generator which is just humming away, disconnected to the experience. It has to be connected to the wheel, and the aural sensation has to be connected to the experience and the G-forces and these things. So that's how the direct drive came up as a concept, that you can lock in and be direct, or when you want to rev up and gain power, you unlock this kind of torque converter thing, and you have a hydraulic kind of transmission, if you like, conversion of power to torque, and you give an extra kick at lower speeds. And of course, no one was asking for a sports car with no gears. Everyone loves shifting gears. I love shifting gears. I just knew that sensation of instantaneous power response is as engaging or even more engaging than shifting. And I had so many people coming testing the Regera, and I was like, yeah, but I really like shifting. Yeah, but have a go and see what you think. And then, wow, this is happening well. And then you come back. So what about the shifting part? Oh, right. I didn't even think about that. And I guess this is a question to you, James, because you've driven it. And what are your thoughts regarding that kind of sensation?
Yeah, it is. Well, first of all, it's one of, if not the most unique driving experience that I've had. I liken it, and it's interesting that you said the idea came from having lived with a Tesla. When people ask me what it's like, I say it's like a V8 powered Tesla. It's the easiest way of explaining it, because as exactly as you said, it's got that massive instant torque. I mean, lag just isn't a word in this car, yet it's still supported by the familiar sound of a combustion engine. And those two things together haven't ever existed in a package that fast. And then on top of that, despite the fact that, okay, it also has an engine, there's no conventional gearbox. So it still drives like a Tesla in that sense. It's really unique. And if there's ever a car that I've been in that disguises its speed, that thing is ludicrous. You will look down and you're like, that can't be right, It's all of a sudden, it's created its own vacuum through the air and just punched itself. It is absolutely outstanding. So everything that just worked together, incredible traction control, great tires. But I did think, again, at some point, physics might take over. You can't have that much torque and it not sort of, be a problem. And it just never gave an ounce of slip. I'm not sure I actually saw any lights flash up on the dash saying, we're actually helping you stay alive here. It just did it. Yeah. So fascinating car. Being someone on the more nerdy side of my interests, I've always been fascinated by gearboxes, transmissions, how they interact and relate to the engine driving experience. And this is something which I never experienced. There is no conventional gearbox as such. You guys abbreviate it to KDD, Koenigsegg Direct Drive. The decoupling function of almost pre-loading it in order to get that instant like slingshot effect is bonkers.
And one thing I think is also important, if you floor it, you uncouple, it flares up, and you feel, ooh, this is almost too much, this feels almost unnatural, and then you kind of, ooh, do I dare to keep it down? And you start lifting, and I can do a little bit more, and you start kind of going a little bit backwards and forwards. The engine sound matches that. It goes, wow, wow. It's directly connected. The sound is also connected to your foot, and that was very important as well, to have not this kind of static rumbling. It's really tuned to go with the G-force and your foot movement and the motion of the car, even though everything is instant.
What I quite liked about the car was I filled it up at a petrol station forecourt with conventional fuel, and the irony was that I left the petrol station forecourt in E mode. Yeah, it's just a really interesting car that there's all of these other driving experiences in one package. So really trick thing that we'll be sharing again as part of this series. Now, depending on how long this takes to unfold and launch, I'm still hoping to take you up on the invite to come and check out the gearbox on the Jesko. That would be, I mean, I'm a really big fan of a twin clutch box, particularly in a sports car, but obviously they come with inherent weight, size, etc. Shift speed is great, but when we first had the factory walk and talk with yourself just before Geneva last year, you introduced me to your new 9-speed box, which I'm still trying to get around my head actually. But if you're able to give a brief context as to how that new gearbox will work in Jesko, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I guess we look a bit schizophrenic from the outside. One car we have no gears, the next car we have 9 gears.
9.
So I jokingly say, like, yeah, we had so many leftover gears from the Regera program, we had to do something with it. but you know, it's, you know, many of the crazy things you see in our Koenigsegg's, well, I would say many, maybe it's the wrong word, but quite a few of them is originated from my own madness of linking things and coming up with things like the direct drive in the Regera. But we have an engineer here who was thinking about other things, and he showed me, his name is Dag Belenius, has been with the company for 20 years, just a brilliant guy, and come up with so many nice solutions for us over the years, just a genius. And then he comes to me and says, Christian, I think I have come up with an idea how to make a real gearbox much lighter and smaller than anything else before it. Oh, really? Okay, then he showed me this idea on paper. I said, wow, okay, so let's simulate a little bit and have some second and third opinions. And no one could punch a hole through the idea. And suddenly we realized we could make a transmission without the penalty of the downside of being bulky and heavy. I mean, that was one of the ideas with the direct drive, that we remove all these 7-8 gears of weight and replace them with electrical motors and batteries instead, so we get power and torque instead of just weight and friction loss. Of course, the electrical motors and batteries are heavier than just a few gears, but at least you got something else. But here, it's shrunken down and so compact that it made sense again to do a gearbox, and especially with the promise of the fastest shifting possibility heard of so far, and the ability to jump from any gear to any other gear as fast as to the next gear. Anyone that have driven a performance DCT well, a lot will know that it can shift fast in one direction, but only in the pre-selected direction, not in the non-pre-selected direction, because it's not a triple shaft gearbox, it's a dual shaft, so you can engage 2 gears at the same time and then change clutches. But in our gearbox we really have more or less a clutch per gear. So we just jump between this clutch or that clutch, which means gear. And it doesn't take any longer or slower depending on which one you choose. But not only that, it's also kind of a derailing system like on a bike, that we compound gears. That's why we have 3 shafts as well. So you select these 2 and it becomes that gear. But if you select these 2, it becomes another gear. So we only need 6 gears to create 9 combinations, or it's 3 times 3 becomes 9. So it has the weight of a lightweight 6-speed transmission, but as we compound 3 times 3, it becomes 9. And instead of synchros, we use clutches. So that's in a nutshell what it is.
Yes.
And that enables shifting from any gear to any super fast. And there is no real shifting time. It is clutch opening, clutch closing time. And when you do that properly, you don't lose torque. You're slipping through both of them, so you have propulsion all the time. And it happens super fast. And I'm really excited by that one as well, because if you're supposed to shift, at least it should be enjoyable. And this is, again, lightning fast and predictable. And as you have 9 gears, you can have a short first, second, third. And now in our previous cars, we could do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour or 0 to 60 in first gear, because the shift meant we would lose acceleration. But here we have a first gear that goes to like 40 kilometers per hour, and then you shift into second, but the shift doesn't slow the car down. So here you get that oral sensation of a super fast rev with 1600 gears, and it just shifts all. It sounds like a motorcycle basically. So I'm very excited by that. And of course here with that gearbox, there is no need for electrification really. I mean, there is no need for super torque down low in RPM, because the gears are so short, you're immediately in high RPM anyway. So it's kind of the absolute opposite direction of the Regera. The Regera is the ultimate GT. This is I would say, the closest thing on 4 wheels to a superbike sensation.
Right, that's music to my ears, man. Honestly, I'm so excited for that. That'd be great.
It is
what
exciting.
we'd love to do, hopefully if your prototype is available towards the end of this series, it would be the cherry on the cake to see what that's all about and experience that box as the sort of, next stage of the brand.
Let's aim for that.
But we've got 7 cars first.
Yeah, let's aim for that.
Plenty to go at. Fantastic. All right, so that's the structure. The idea is that we really want to take you, the audience, on the sort of full immersive journey and story of each of these phenomenal cars, from Koenigsegg, to paint the picture really of how things have evolved, why these cars are so special, highlighting all of these incredible records that seem to be broken along the way. I'm going to get you a microphone for Christmas, Christian, just so you can drop it every now and again. Yeah, at this stage, we'd love to hear from you. Questions, comments in the comment section below. No doubt I'll be speaking to Christian and the Koenigsegg team over this journey. So any questions or anything specific that you'd like to know or see, please let us know. But once again, honestly, mate, I'm really thankful to be given the official blessing, really, to create this series. And if it wasn't for your help and support, we wouldn't be here. So thank you very much.
Well, we're very excited that you spend time and energy to do it. It's an amazing recap for us. It's never been done before. It's something we're also very, very excited by. So we thank you.
Brilliant. Okie doke. Well, that's it for now. Perhaps we can do this maybe towards the end of it and recap and see what's what. And, no doubt by then as well, we'll probably have lots of audience engagement. So maybe we'll be able to, get those guys involved and answer their questions. So thank you so much. We'll wrap that up. I've got a lot of Koenigsegg's to film now. So
Great. Well, thanks so much, James. And good luck, and hope you can enjoy yourself.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Christian. Take care. Just ciao. Bye. So there we have it. Massively excited to announce the Chronicles of Koenigsegg, which will be hitting the channel soon. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. You do not want to miss this world exclusive series. Once again, massive thank you to Super Vettura or Koenigsegg UK, Christian von Koenigsegg, for taking his time out of busy schedule of creating some of the world's best cars to chat to us. Hopefully it sets some context as to what's to come. Questions and comments below. The world is our oyster to create what we want and what you want to see. So let me know, and I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching. Ciao.